I won't say which school we were in, but we were in a school's wrestling room for weigh-ins at regionals, and on their wall, it had beat Star Valley on their wall as their goal. And we use that as motivation to say, our goal every single year is to win a state title. It's not to beat anybody individually, it's to win a state title.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Jake Hibbard, and so happy to be back with you for another week. We're one away from the region basketball season. Hey, by the way, check me out tomorrow morning on First Bank Sports Friday as Duke, Dal, and I will be breaking down the upcoming region season. And Star Valley Indoor Track had its first practice on Monday. Their first meet will be on January 18th at Idaho State in Pocatello. And wrestling is a month in, and things are starting to take shape. And this weekend, they're the only varsity program in action for Star Valley, as both the girls and the boys will be at the Madison Invitational at Rexburg. Moving around the region more freely and across state lines is something that wrestling is able to do, much like cross country or track and field. I hear cross country coaches talk a lot about the Utah competition they can go see, or maybe a track about how they can go compete in a different event in maybe a different state. But it was interesting talking with Star Valley head wrestling coach Eddie Clark this week, because I found out as you change regions in wrestling, you change styles as well.
When we go out to Utah, we see a certain style of wrestling. The Utah guys, a lot of funk. Those guys are kind of the Sanderson school of wrestling, because Dale Sanderson and his brothers and all those guys are kind of out running around in Utah. So there's a lot of that type of stuff. When they're on top, they're working spirals and just some different wrestling skills. When we go over here, it's a lot of head levers and arm bars and legs and a different style of wrestling. Things are kind of regional. We'll go out over here and we'll wrestle guys that wrestle a little bit different styles, so it exposes us to different things, which might expose us to things that we need to work at to better ourselves to be ready at the end.
Helen Kimball Perry and Cooper Burke are the three champions, and when I need some historical context for Star Valley sports, I know to go straight to Dal Star Valleypedia Erickson. So Dal, what's the historical context for three returning state champions?
You've got three returning state champions from last year. This is Coach Clark's 26th year at Star Valley High School. That's never happened. Tel Perry, who's wrestling at 138, Tel's a two-time returning state champion. He's a junior, chance to be Star Valley's first ever four-timer. Star Valley's never had one. You have to credit Spencer Condi. He did a ton of research. I think the last time I looked, Star Valley had twice as many state placers as like the next closest program. So, I mean, there's a long and strong tradition. The most recent guy I can remember was Ricky Fairbanks. Ricky Fairbanks advanced to 4 finals, but 2 were with Jackson, and then he wanted to wrestle for a team title. So he actually is one of those guys that switched from Jackson to Star Valley, but he was a 4-time finalist. He won 2 and lost 2. And then you got to go back to, I think it was Nick Gagich back in the early 80s. I think he ended up being a 4-timer, but he moved away.
That's a lot at the top, but how does the rest of the varsity program round out this year?
The varsity lineup itself is pretty dang strong. Then once you get to that first JV slot, kids that just don't have quite the experience like the Perrys or somebody would, and they're just going to have to step up.
I talk about Star Valley being ready to reload most seasons. In a lot of cases, that's true this year, but you've also got historically probably one of the newer Star Valley teams in terms of varsity experience. In all the years I've been covering Star Valley, it was super common to have 10, 12, 13, 15 placers coming back for the next season. This year it's 4.
So 4 guys with medals at state tournaments, the lowest probably returning group I've had since my first year here. We're just kind of expecting those kids to step up to a next level a little bit.
You had a lot of kids from last year who barely missed placing. Like maybe they qualified for the state tournament, then they lose in that second loss comes in like the knockout round, and they end up not being on the podium, or they end up not scoring points, but they had a pretty good season. They're ready to kind of step into those roles.
We're about 2 full weeks behind where we should be at this point normally. I mean, because there's just been that much more to teach, and the progression's been a little slower and all those things.
It was interesting as I was talking to everyone this week about the program being newer. There was a lack of concern that I could only describe as so Star Valley.
A lot of it with your wrestling programs depends on where your focus is. I remember one time, it's been quite a few years ago, we were in I won't say which school we were in, but we were in a school's wrestling room for weigh-ins at regionals, and on their wall, it had beat Star Valley on their wall as their goal. And we use that as motivation to say, you know, our goal every single year is to win a state title. It's not to beat anybody individually, it's to win a state title.
Well, let's jump back to Tel Perry. He's trying to become the first 4-time state champion for Star Valley, but he's a junior. First, he has to stay healthy and put himself in position to become a 3-time state champion. Adam Guild was a longtime Star Valley head coach in wrestling, and he talked about the difficulty of managing those expectations.
Sometimes I think they get caught up on, I want to be a 3-time state champ, and then that's where they're focused on instead of just relaxing and wrestling. Kids wrestle a lot better when they just relax and they just wrestle. We've seen that a lot with kids that are, you know, they win like say 20 in a row and haven't lost one, and that becomes their focus, is like going undefeated. And then once they lose that, sometimes they actually start wrestling better because now they don't have to worry about going undefeated. It's kind of a similar thing. If he can keep that off of his shoulders, you know, and not worry about, I got to do this because I want to be the first 4-time state champ from Star Valley. If he can just go out and wrestle, I think he's going to be super dang tough to beat.
How about his brother Kimball, who won state at 106 last year and is up to 120 this year?
He's super strong. That's one of the things. Him and his brother are not scared to put in time in the off season in the CrossFit gym and in the weight room and stuff. And so he's not going to be hurting for strength, that's for sure.
At 157, returning state champ Cooper Burke has been injured lately, but fortunately will be back in action in Rexburg this weekend.
Well, you know, he put on a show out there in Viewmont in the finals, but he got a little bit nicked up this last weekend in Box Elder, so we're working him back. We're, you know, and planning to take him out there to Madison this week. He kind of got hurt a little bit, so we just sat him out of a couple matches there in the last few matches in Box Elder. You know, let's not push it. Let's make sure we're healthy at the end. Cooper works really hard at this. He loves wrestling, and he wants to be successful at it. And he pushes real hard, and he does a lot of extra stuff. So he's one of those kids who's you know, he's just an example of what hard work over time does.
I just know, and especially in Cooper's weight class in there, you better come to the mat ready to wrestle every single time, because you very seldom are going to get a break.
The 4th state placer from a year ago was Grant Thompson, a senior at 215. His coach Eddie Clark talked about the growth that Thompson's shown in his short time in the program.
Wrestling wasn't something he started into because he wanted to be a wrestler. He started wrestling because he wanted to be a better football player.
Grant's a horse. He's a stud. He placed last year. He's going to be contending for a championship.
He's doing well. I mean, he went undefeated at our tournament. He won the Viewmont tournament out there last weekend. We were out in Box Elder, and he wrestled in the finals there. So he's competing with the best kids in Utah, and Utah is one of the better wrestling states around. So he's right there, and he's come a long way. I think the biggest development in Grant is his confidence is growing. When you just start into this late, you don't have a lot of confidence. So he wants to go to college and play football, and you know, you have a kid who's learns to count on himself and trust himself and all those things. College coaches are going to love that.
On the girls' side, Star Valley's the 2-time defending state champs and primed for a 3rd. Individually, the program returns a state champion from last year in Kara Andrews, and 2023 state champion Vale Foreman also returns.
You got a Vale Foreman who was wrestling in our boys program before girls wrestling was a thing in the state of Wyoming. You know, her skill level's high.
I think she's looking good. I think she has, once again, you know, you get a state title under your belt. It gives you that little bit of that swagger that we talked about and a little bit of confidence coming into the next season. It really, really does. It helps the whole team because you have that confidence. You have those girls that you know they're just going to be solid. They come back, especially they're a year older.
And last year's state runner-up, Remy Allman, has had a great start to the year.
She really likes the headlock and throws and stuff. And so sometimes she'll get those quick pins because she'll go hit one of those moves on a girl and nail them quick. So yeah, she's good at that. My biggest concern with Remy is keeping her healthy.
Again, Madison Invitational tomorrow and Saturday in Rexburg. That's it for me. But hey, check me out tomorrow morning on the First Bank Sports Friday.